Welcome to the Evening Review. My name is Ndapwilapo, and joining me in studio is Shimutwikeni of the Namibia International Energy Conference. Welcome to the Evening Review, ma'am.
Thank you for having me.
You recently, the recently concluded Namibia International Energy Conference. Just want to understand from your end what necessitated the need for the energy conference.
Okay. I think maybe it's better to start with context. So the platform was founded 10 years ago in 2012. It was initially Namibia International Oil and Gas Conference, and we've been hosting it every 2 years since inception. End of last month, we had the 5th edition of the conference under the theme Shaping the Future of Energy Towards Value Creation. The conference is a thought leadership platform. It brings together the public and private sector, international experts, local and continental experts to share lessons learned in how best to manage our resources for the benefit of Namibians and Africa at a larger scale. So it's a platform for collaborations, knowledge exchange, networking, and also unlocking opportunities.
And what are the highlights of the recently concluded conference, if one has to look back at now? And perhaps could you also speak about the growth of the conference since the establishment of the platform?
Yes. In terms of the growth, from 2012 to now, even last year we had a conference and we had around 350 delegates, and this year around we had 500 delegates, which shows the increase in interest in Namibia's energy landscape. In terms of the highlights, we had the ministerial panel discussions. So we had ministers from Senegal, Angola, Ghana, Equatorial Guinea, and also the African Petroleum Organization. And the reason for that format is I think it's very important in terms of our natural resources management that Africans speak to Africans. And Namibia is very privileged to be able to learn from others in terms of the mistakes they've made and also in terms of what has worked for them. So we have the opportunity to leapfrog, and hence the Ministry of Mines and Energy invited the ministers for that panel discussion, which was very insightful on how can we create value. Another highlight is that many of the big international oil companies and energy companies and financial institutions were part of the conversations. So the likes of NAMCO, RMB, Chevron, Total Energies, Shell were some of the sponsors of this conference. And so we had high-level executives from those institutions globally come and share also what their vision is for Namibia and why they're excited about the current developments in the sector. Another key highlight is the conference really focused on defining what is value creation in terms of the different stakeholders. So of course, from the Namibian point of view, it is how do Namibians participate in the industry? Does the oil and gas industry, is it going to create jobs since we have high unemployment? And what are the international standards in participating in the sector? And from the investor point of view, they stress the importance of having an enabling environment as the industry is very capital intensive and also skills intensive. And also, I think lastly, just to highlight, is the gender diversity in the industry was also a key factor, a key discussion point. And there was a launch of a women network for oil and gas and energy, where the deputy minister is a patron of that network. Okay,
and if you have to look at this initiative, we recently, or not we, but rather NAMCO, the national oil company, last year, beginning of the year, announced the discovery by Shell and by Total, together with Qatar Energy. How much excitement has that created in Namibia since those announcements were made? And do you see more and more interest in Namibia as an oil destination?
Yeah, no, it has created great excitement. I think even greater excitement globally in terms of the opportunities that these discoveries can unlock. But I think it's also very important to manage expectations. I mean, you discover oil today, it doesn't mean tomorrow it's out of the ground. it is a process which can, go between, 3 to 5 years, even up to 7 years, depending on the success of the appraisals being done by the companies. So I can say that the excitement is high, and not just locally, also just globally.
And then if one looks now at the conversations that are being held at a high level, particularly from the end of government, from the standpoint of government, how confident are you in Namibia's ability to manage this and possibly also avoid a curse for the citizens?
Well, I specialize in natural resources law and policy. And my observation in terms of the framework that the government has in place, we have the Petro Fund, which is in charge of training and education for Namibians to participate in the industry, and that was founded already in the 90s. Actually, as a matter of fact, there's a local content workshop taking place this week that the ministry is leading to workshop with the public on how Namibians can participate in the oil and gas industry. So I think in terms of the framework, the legal framework, I think, compared to other countries who are, when there's a discovery, they start putting up frameworks. Namibia already had that in place. I think the most important thing is managing expectations and also ensuring that, in terms of implementation, because it's good to have good laws and regulations, but implementation is key, and of course governance.
And then there are obviously we've seen would not necessarily dare call it infighting, but there are some unpleasant things that have been happening that has been reported in the media. How much of a concern is this? Do you think that it could have, with particularly our national oil and gas company, and do you think it could have bearing in terms of how Namibia is being viewed as an oil and gas destination for investors?
Yeah, yes, like as everybody else in the public, of course, these are concerns. I think what is important is that, I think from an investor point of view, transparency and governance, are key to any successful industry. And just going back, I think, to your other question where you said, I didn't address talking about how can we avoid the so-called resource curse. I think it's very important for Namibia to craft a vision for what this resource should do for itself. In terms of, for example, diversifying the economy is very important. So we have to also invest in agriculture and education. You have the likes of the UAE, who, yes, they are oil-producing country, but if you really look at the country, it's focusing on being a financial hub or innovation hub. So it's very important for the country to put together some kind of vision or roadmap on how to unlock the value of these resources, and governance and transparency being, at the top of that agenda.
I'd like to hone in more on the oil and gas discussion, but I'd quickly like to call for a short commercial break, so do stay tuned.
To another exciting episode of Irongo Talk.
Hier is die weer en vertel ook vir julle waar die vis heel moontlik kan byt.
Welcome to What's Cooking, where culinary passion meets expert insights.
Somebody must really want to cook and want to cook good food.
Immerse yourself in the bustling world of professional kitchens as top chefs create mouthwatering dishes. Join us for in-depth interviews as our host explores the experiences and expertise of our guest chefs. Don't miss out. Tune in to What's Cooking on NTV every Friday at 2100 hours and let the culinary adventure begin.
We are so excited to be kickstarting your morning with the entertainment.
Everything was happening during
this past weekend.
Yes.
Exciting news.
Wow, no, she was killing it already.
In my opinion, I don't see anything wrong with him serving the full term.
As well as keeping you informed on the issues that you need to know happening in and around our country.
Welcome back to the evening review. Now, we find ourselves in a situation where countries are pushing for environmentally friendly laws, and one thing that features highly is this issue of net neutrality. From your point of view, would it be fair Namibia has made this significant discovery, but is at the same time yet expected to make moves towards net neutrality?
That's a very great question and a key issue on the continent. I mean, we have to acknowledge that we are polluting the world. I mean, globally as human beings. However, almost 600 million people in Africa have no access to energy. So kids are reading with candlelight. People are still using biomass, and we need energy to industrialize. So I think it will not be fair to say Africa cannot touch its resources, or Namibia, because of these net zero ambitions. I think it's a matter of a balancing act. So we talk about the just energy transition. So there's a balancing act between the three legs of ESG: the environmental aspects, the social aspects, and the governance aspect. From a global and a developed countries' point of view, there's a strong focus on environment aspect. From a continental point of view is the social aspect. So it is a balancing act. In terms of Namibia, it's one of the few countries in the world where the protection of the environment is enshrined in our constitution. So from get-go, protecting our environment is key. We have a big tourism industry that feeds many people, and protecting the environment is part of the process. And also from a regulatory point of view, for companies to come into the country to explore our resources, they have to meet several environmental obligations in the first place. So in that sense, we are environmentally conscious, but at the same time we have high poverty in not only Namibia but across the continent. And for us to industrialize, to build infrastructure, to build the schools, the hospitals, etc., you require energy. So it is a matter of just achieving a balance. And realistically, the renewable energy it is very great. It cannot industrialize Africa. It's not enough to industrialize Africa. And I think also, just in simple terms, when people fly, the guests who came for the conference, they came on planes, and the planes require fuel. When you drive our cars, we require fuel. So I think it's very important to have realistic conversations, at the same time still taking into account that we have to protect the environment.
And then want to know, you spoke about the issue of the recently launched chapter for women. Are you satisfied with efforts to get women into this field? I know that there are a lot of engagements to encourage women to follow fields, STEM fields, but particularly for oil and gas.
Yes, I think in our national energy policy there is a section on mainstreaming gender in the energy space. And actually, many of the ladies, the leadership in the oil and gas industry is women. You have, Maggie Shino, Petroleum Commissioner. You have Vicky Sibia, Executive of Upstream Exploration at NAMCO. So the women are in the industry. The efforts have to be intentional. And also, in terms of women in the industry, it's also very important to define where they are participating. Are we in leadership positions? Are we in management positions? Are we on the rigs? So it's across the value chain. So I think Namibia is one of those countries that's at the forefront in terms of including women in the industry. But we know that globally it's not naturally, but it's a male-dominated space.
And then Namibia's current laws, Namibia's current regulations, and given that we're living in a fast evolving world on the back of these oil discoveries, do you believe that they are relevant to the situation currently on the ground? And second to that is, do you believe that it creates a just environment for development in the country, but also for the investor to be able to pull to make a return on investment?
Yeah, I mean that's actually it was one of the key, I think, discussion points at the conference as well. Is to say, okay, we live in an ecosystem, and all the stakeholders within that ecosystem, have to get value, from the resources, and that's the wider society, the men on the street, government in terms of taxes and royalties, investors in terms of return on investment. And I mean, at the moment, in terms of local content, which is the value that the country gets besides royalties and taxes, it's a very topical issue because that defines how Namibians can participate in the industries and what opportunities there are. In terms of the royalties, in the taxes, Namibia is one of the countries globally where it's actually quite favorable for the investors. But the government is also getting a big take from it as well. So I think the question is, so how does it now trickle down to the wider society?
And then there's been a lot of policy uncertainty regarding Namibia in terms of the Investment Act, and on the other side, Namibia Equitable Empowerment Framework. How much do you see those two issues being an impediment for investors to come into Namibia as far as oil and gas investments are concerned?
I think in terms of oil and gas investments are concerned, I go back to this issue of local content, which tries to address what is in that second act you mentioned. It's standard across oil producing nations. All oil producing nations, they have either a localization strategy, a local content strategy, what people refer to as an empowerment strategy. But this is more, I think it is more holistic because we have what you call the backward linkages and the forward linkages. The industry, there's going to be services around the industry, from catering to security to transportation to aviation. So there's a whole, opportunities and services linked to the industry. So the issue is, how do we ensure that Namibians are able to participate? So even if you're not directly involved, but at least in terms of servicing the sector, you can participate. And from Angola, Nigeria, Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, Norway, all over the world, local content in this industry it's a requirement. So it's nothing new. So those companies coming here, they are used to working within that framework, which I think balances the needs of the investors and then balances the needs of the people.
Thank you very much for joining us on the Evening Review.
No, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for tuning in. Good night.
A blueprint produced in 1986 under the able leadership of our current president, His Excellency Dr. Hage Gottfried Keingop, at the time when he was the Director General of the United Nations Institute for Namibia. In Chapter 10 of that work, it gives a meticulous account of the energy mix that was available at the time and that is available for further exploration and exploitation in future. Excitingly, but not surprisingly, many of those potential sources identified at the time has now become a reality. One such source is the recent oil discoveries in the Orange Basin. Director of Ceremonies, ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about shaping the future of energy towards value creation, we should consider shaping it along the following lines. First of all, as I said earlier, it must be for the benefit of our people, especially the youth, because tomorrow they will be the ones filling these seats They will be the ones standing at the podium where I'm standing today, and they need to be included in this conversation. Our efforts should be geared towards the reduction of youth unemployment. Our natural resources must be used to uplift and empower the youth and create opportunities for skills development and capacity development. It should not be the converse, where our natural resources becomes a source of discontentment amongst the youth that leads to revolts and social unrest. Our natural resources should serve as a catalyst for poverty reduction in all spheres of society. Again, we should not forget that Namibia is a country where income inequalities exist at the highest levels. So we should use the benefits of our natural resources to address ills such as those. Thirdly, we should not allow any form of corruption to manifest itself in the management of our natural resources. And this should be stemmed at the root cause, whether it's those that initiate corruption or those that are at the receiving end of corruption. We should not allow it. We should espouse sound governance and create mutually beneficial climates for all stakeholders and development partners involved in these endeavors. It is incumbent upon all participants who is eager to shape the future of energy towards value creation to stay clear from corruption and mismanagement of our resources. Let me turn back to the tradition of storytelling as I conclude. In Africa, and Namibia being no exception, we find a lot of wild animals. So if you have not visited Namibia as a tourist, please talk to me. I can talk to my counterpart and we can extend your visa so that you can do some tourism. And we have the Big Five in Namibia, and lions are part of the Big Five. Now, one animal that fascinates me is the lioness, because a lioness, with its tenacity, its endurance, and its guts to attack any type of animal is very remarkable and unmatched, perhaps. When a lioness dares to take down a big animal like a buffalo, she does it in a very systematic way, one bite at a time. And occasionally a lion will come around to help when help is needed. But when the lioness have taken down the buffalo, the whole pride is allowed to feed. When I look at Selma, she resembles an African lioness. I want to encourage you, Selma, continue bringing the conversation home. Africa and Namibia is awaiting to feed. I thank you so much.
Yeah, first of all, good morning to you all. This is a hard act to follow, the African storytelling. The only thing I get close to is when the executive director mentioned the dogs, or the dog. I got 2 Labradors myself. We got them through COVID, and I didn't realize how big and how strong they could get. So now when I walk in town, then I often go for a run with the 2 dogs, and sometimes it's more them pulling me than they pulling me, or me pulling them. And it's quite interesting, because you go to a restaurant or you go somewhere else, and I was in Swakopmund and people said to me, "Oh, are you that guy with the dogs?" Yeah? And we live very close to the St. Paul School, and at the St. Paul School, of course, there's a lot of traffic in the morning, so they all see me and they say, "Oh, you're the guy with the dogs." So doesn't even get close to your stories, but I like your stories a lot better though. Yeah. But just to set a little bit the scene. So Dennis Zekveld, I'm the country chair for Shell here in Namibia. I've been here since 2014. So this is certainly my second home. I joined Shell in 2000 in the UK, and since that we always move to different countries. But Namibia has become, as the Petroleum Commissioner knows, has become my second home. My children even refer to it, especially my son, and he often said, "But Daddy, I am Namibian." I said, "Yeah, okay. Technically speaking, you're Dutch actually." But then he says, "I haven't really lived in Holland that much," and that's also true. He was born there, but didn't spend much time there. But maybe a couple of comments which I would like to make. The first one, yesterday we had a reception, and I would like to, because this is a larger group, yesterday was a good turnout, but this is a larger group, I would like to acknowledge Wits Africa. They've really done a tremendous job, and I know it's never one person, Selma, but you are certainly, as far as I'm concerned,